Hey, everybody. Welcome to today's episode of the Player Engage podcast. Before we get started, I just want to let you know what you're going to be hearing. You're going to hear from Dang Stefan Lahong from Playa Games and Conor McGinley from Bytro. Both of them are part of the Stillfront family, and both of them are customer service leads as well as community service leads for their respective companies. And we're going to talk about the transition to a new tool. So how do you work with your players? How do you work with your community? How do you work with your own internal employees and prep them for a new tool? How do you make that change? How do you make sure that players are used to a new system? So there's a lot of cool best practices around customer service here, and I hope you get to enjoy it. So let us know how you feel about it and drop us a line. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Player Engage podcast. Greg here. Today we have a fun episode to lead us into the Gamescom Community Clubhouse that's coming up here in a couple of weeks. We are joined by Dang Stefan Lahong from Playa Games and Conor McGinley from Bytro. They are both part of the Stillfront family. And you'll see they have two very different perspectives in community management and leading a support team. Dang has been the lead community manager for Playa Games for the past couple of years, and he's also been he was at Big Point for over 10 years. And the most exciting part, if we have time to it, was he spent 4 years at Porsche. So for some weird reason, we have extra time at the end. We're going to dig deep into Porsche. And with Conor, he was a customer support manager at Bytro for over 3 years, and he's also spent time at Wildlife Studios as well as Accenture. So we have a full episode full of great stuff today. Before we go on, Dang, Conor, thanks for joining me. Dang, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, guys. My name's Dang. I'm a team lead community management at Playa Games in Hamburg, Germany. I'm within the gaming industry for more than 15 years, mostly engaging with customer service and community management. Yeah, and I'm happy to be here and have some interesting conversation with you guys.
Yeah, we're excited to have you here. Dang, you have a great background. I know you've spent a lot of time in help shift, so I'd love to kind of pick your brain on that. And thanks for joining. And Conor, also thank you for joining us today. You want to say a little something about yourself?
Hi, I'm Conor. I'm the customer support manager at Bytro Labs, also in Hamburg, Germany. And for the past 8 years or so, I've been in and out of the gaming industry, working for developers directly and for contractors, which is always a lot of fun. I'm also happy to be here.
We are happy to have you both here. And we're both really excited about this panel that's going to be going on at GDC as well. And what we heard about Community Clubhouse previously was that people wanted it to be more technical, more advanced strategies. And what we're doing right now is kind of like, for those of you who went to university or know university, a 101 level course, right? This is our intro we're going to be doing right now. And then we're going to get much more in depth at Community Clubhouse at Gamescom. So this is the teaser for that. So if you're hungry for more, let us know afterwards. But let's start high level for both Dang and Conor. You've both made this realization within the past couple of years that you wanted to move your support from an external location to in-app. So whether it was web-based, whether it was forum-based or Discord-based to focusing it on in-app. And I'm curious on kind of what was that moment that light bulb went off where you said, you know what? We need a better solution for this. We need to find a different way to help support our community and provide the appropriate level of support for them. So, yeah. So from a high level perspective, Conor, do you maybe want to kick us off and how you kind of went about that route and what made you realize that?
When I started at Bytro, we were using a contact form and email setup. And when you're working with cases like this, you wind up on a very case by case individual basis. It becomes much, much harder to track issues from specific locations, from specific game states, from different trends. So organizing a setup that lets you process a lot of cases very quickly and effectively is next to impossible if you don't have the context and the metadata from the app itself.
Was there a specific goal or KPI here at Help Shift? We do OKRs, and kind of our OKRs are always improve first time response or average handle time. Was there kind of a goal that made you think, all right, let's revisit this current situation on how we can improve it?
So after working with this system for a couple of months, I specifically wanted to move to HelpShift because I'd used it before. And what I find exceptionally useful is being able to firstly collect the information about the player, about the app. So we don't need to ask them questions such as their username, their email address. That's already stored, that's already accessible for us. And if we are aware that something might be going wrong in a specific area of the game, it's much easier then to see, well, the player's on this map and they've said they've had a bug. It's probably this one we know about. So already you skip a lot of the interaction and get straight to the point, which is the most important thing for me when dealing with players. And what we were really looking to do was increase the amount of resolves we could manage, because you want to keep agents in a flow state. You want them able to hammer out good quality, decent replies quickly without needing to debate with the player to get to the point.
I love that. And I want to come back to that in a little bit on how you make sure that your agents remain consistent with a high level of quality responses, right? Because again, consistency and if you want to be able to scale, you need a good consistent methodology that agents can come in onboard real quick and do the same thing over and over again. So I want to come back and kind of double tap into that. But I'm curious from Dang's perspective, how do you recognize that something needs to change? Was that when you were at maybe Big Point and you saw how HelpShift worked, or you just knew once you jumped into Playa that a better help desk was needed?
No, it was already at Big Point when I realized that, kind of email only support is outdated. We need to go more modern ways. And first and foremost, I wanted players to not have to leave the app when asking for support, finding knowledge database, self-service themselves within the app without having to leave it, and also having the possibility to contact support directly from within the game. That was a um, main win for me, to realize a better user experience regarding support.
What did your users what was their reaction to a new support system? And this is always, my background as a sales engineer, right? And we always talk about implementation and how that goes. And you don't always want to kick a sleeping dog, is what I like to say sometimes, is if everything's working, but you realize there's a better way here. So, how do your players react to a change when all of a sudden their system is different?
It was mixed. Some were really appreciating it, but some older customers who were used to have the email conversation, they were probably kind of overwhelmed with the new system, did not really know how to interact with automations, and were rather asking for a direct contact to a human person instead of being directed through a leaded automated conversation. Um, but within the community, I realized that other players, when those who had doubts about the new system, probably were complaining about it in our Discord. Other players jumped in, explained them the system, and also showed them, hey, it's a way where you will get help much more quickly, because the questions which are being asked automated, as in the other case, have been asked by our agents, and then the customer needs to read the email, agent needs to read his reply, and so on, which takes a lot of time and bi-directional conversation. Whereas we, with the automations, we could collect all important informations with an automated conversation basically right away.
Yeah, it's funny. I hear that quite a bit, and it's kind of the beauty of building a community. And maybe it's not exactly where you're going, but a lot of people in community get used to just being able to talk to someone, whether it be via email, whether it be a chat, and whether that be your support agent or someone else. And the beauty of having a Discord set up is that if someone still wants to drop their question to a channel, right, they can still have conversations with the rest of the community as well. It's just you save your support agents for the tickets that need to be handled. And you could also segment users, right? So if you want to make sure someone goes directly to an agent to speak to that agent, you have that ability to. And Conor, I know you dealt with something like that, right? You were kind of a Discord friendly support team prior to your move. I was curious kind of how your your older players who have been playing the game for a while, how did they take to this new based system when you got things set up, and how did you deal with that?
The Discord inclusion actually came about only a little bit before the adoption of HelpShift. Rather, the community support was handled through email, through the contact forms, but volunteers would handle it. We still use Discord now, not for support, but there are help channels, there are discussion channels, so there's plenty of ways for players to have their low level questions answered, to deliver their feedback, and so on, with CS acting as a more structured way to handle that sort of thing. In regards to how the community responded to the new system, the ones who were vocal about it really didn't like it. They found that having multiple automatic steps that they would have to go through was taking up too much of their time, often repeating human agent into the text and not knowing why that didn't just magically grant them a human agent. Um, and generally complaining that this new system isn't the old system, because that's what 99% of these complaints will be. I don't like this system. It's not what I used before. I don't see what was wrong with what I used before. So they did manage to get their hands on some old links, support links that have been shared in the past, so they could continue to send contact form or emails to the old support system, which I kept active as a redundancy. Because when you adopt something new, there's always a chance something is going wrong where you can't see it. Always best to have a backup system, which these players would use to try to get their hands on volunteers again and have a direct response, which didn't quite go to plan for them because they just got me advising them to contact the new system.
It's funny how people just love what they know, right? And it makes sense because they know it. But if people were to give new things a shot, right? They're there for a reason. It's to make your team scale better, to make things more efficient, to make people more effective. And it's kind of a interesting conversation you have to have with your team as well as your players. And something that always really fascinates me with that, both of your studios, both Bytro and Playa, are part of the Stillfront group. The thing is, I think both of you have very different approaches to customer support, and it's awesome because it says a lot about Stillfront and how they kind of give you your authority to do what you want to do to help your users. But can you kind of, I guess, and I don't know how I'm going to ask this question, so I'm just going to ask it. Kind of, you made the move to HelpShift, or it could be any platform, right? I'm just curious on kind of how do you temper your team, how do you temper your players, how do you temper everyone, like, and how do you review the process once you make that move, right? It's not just hey, I'm gonna turn off the old lights, turn on the new lights. You got to prep everybody. So Dang, I'm gonna see if you know how to answer this first because it's a wild question, but kind of how do you set the expectations for everyone when you make a change like this?
The expectation management was that I introduced HelpShift to my team, um, mostly pointing out the advantages for their daily work, and also because they heard there will be automations and there were some fears that their jobs might be redundant, um, due to the automation, that because in their world everything can be automated completely, and then they said, oh, I'm not needed anymore. So that was something I had to mitigate, telling them it's just to gather information more quickly, being more efficient. And if they have more free time due to being more efficient, we can switch the work power for more useful, more tasks like expanding the knowledge database or any other stuff we are dealing with in community management, which is not related to support itself.
How did your agents react after the change? Whether it be 3 months down the line, 6 months down the line, did they see the benefits of the new system, or do you think those fears are kind of still?
No, I think the fears vanished right away because tickets were still coming in. They had still stuff to do. I think they needed to get used to the new system first, but it went quite quickly. They found out some processes which could be improved. So I was waiting for feedback, getting feedback, and then implementing it to improve the processes, automations. Probably I missed some information which needs to be asked, and then I just created this step to have a full picture of the problems players are being reporting. Yeah, meanwhile, it's easy handling. There are some pain points which I report to my customer success manager, and then hopefully others feeling the same pain, and then it will be solved at some point. And I think my agents also realized that problems can be handled more quickly for the benefit of the player.
I appreciate your transparency there, and it's good to hear. Quite frankly, I feel like at times when you have to be the one that makes that change, you're kind of looked at as kind of you're becoming friction to what that group is used to, right? And how do you convince people, and maybe Dang or maybe Connor, you can take this one. How do you convince your team that this is the right move? You need to just trust in the process, and we will get you there, right? Like, so sometimes being able to see clearly at the end, through all this haze is hard. So how do you get them to see through the haze to be able to see the clear side?
So I was quite fortunate when I set everything up because, like I said, I worked for Helpshift before, so by the time we went live, we had a basic infrastructure in place. For the professional agents on my team, they went from very little categorization to everything is now organized in convenient folders of specific issue types so they can work through, they can expect the content of the ticket before they open it. So they were all very happy with it. The volunteers, on the other hand, were not part of the new system. Their responsibilities were being adjusted now, so they were quite unhappy about this. As far as they were concerned, they were being replaced by an inefficient automatic system that didn't respect the players and didn't respect them, which is, of course, entirely untrue. And one of the main ways that I got them to accept the new way of things is to encourage them into more proactive duties, because volunteers and CS agents, they're not the same thing. CS agents are, of course, professional and are there to do a job. Volunteers are there out of passion. So we moved them into unofficial tournament management, engaging more with the players through Discord, through games, basically more play and less work.
I love the way you put that. I mean, and I think that's kind of what we like to kind of say a lot is, we try to automate the mundane things, password resets, refunds, right? Because again, even as an agent doesn't necessarily want to deal with that stuff, right? But if you could get them thinking about the more logical, tougher questions, ways you can maybe strengthen other skills, maybe it's focusing, like you said, more on the community, more on another thing like trust and safety, right? You can kind of expand the agent's mindset by saying, hey, you can work on some more complicated things. And I think that's a huge selling point we have, because again, you don't want to be stuck in the mundane. I'm curious from both of you, you've both gone through this process, and you've probably gone through it with multiple tools, multiple times, multiple things. Like, for the two of you, I mean, I know you guys, I think, first met face to face, I think last week or 2 weeks ago. Like, what are some best practices you would recommend to each other on kind of how you work with your teams, how you scale? Because again, you both, when we spoke with you earlier, right? I think Connor, I think you have a lot more tickets than Dang. Dang's a little more strategic with how he handles his tickets. So, like, there's a lot of community managers, a lot of support leads that listen to this. So, how do you approach your day to day? What are your best practices that maybe if you were to start your own studio that you would implement right at the gate? And again, that's a pretty loaded question. So Dang, you want to kick it off?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Basically, if I had the free choice, I would implement as many as possible automated solutions which are fully independent from any agents. Like you mentioned, password reset, data deletion requests, and stuff like that, which is basically just kind of monkey work. And then just the more important, more complicated issues being routed through the system to an agent, just to have the time to take care of more important stuff, which is also, I guess, more interesting for an agent to do.
Very similar in I divide everything between information and actions, and information should always be something the players can find out themselves. And when we come to actions, if it doesn't require specific access or expertise, the players should also be able to do it themselves. And if this means having an automatic system in support where players can ask a question, get redirected to an FAQ, I still count that as the player doing it themselves. That's still very much self-driven. Takes a Sorry, I was going to say something, and I didn't have a second half of that sentence. So, what we don't want to do is waste the expertise of our agents who are experts and professionals in what they do. And they should be challenged every single time they have to talk to a player. And so, building the infrastructure, building the automation so that everything gets filtered to only the good stuff coming through. That's the important thing. That's what I wanted to get at.
What I loved hearing you talk about, Connor, in an earlier conversation was how you're now basically reviewing every automation, every bot, everything that you have in the system today because of feedback that you've gotten. And it's not negative feedback, it's just feedback, right? So, how do you determine how you're going to go back to look at every automation, every bot step to improve the workflow here now that it's already set up, right? You basically built yourself a building. How are you going to go take a look at all that, and how are you going to prioritize it?
Oh, this is the toughest question you could have possibly asked. You know, when you are working on something creative and you finish it and you look back on it and you think, I hate everything about this. No one else can see the flaws, no one else can see anything wrong with it, but you know where all the holes are. So, what I tend to do is build something that works, lowercase w, and ask the agents who are working with it to let me know every time there is a stumble, every time they trip up on something, every time they need to go and find more info or do 2 clicks instead of one. And I make a note of that and go back to the automation and see what can I do now to remove that extra click, to remove that obstacle. Occasionally, I will find tickets where they've been closed without a response because one of my automations is triggering in a way it shouldn't be. So, things that are happening by accident get the biggest priority. I need to turn that automation off or I need to remake it. Something's going wrong. I don't understand why, so it has to go until I do. And then after that, we deal with frequently asked questions. If we're always answering the same thing, a bot needs to answer it. And then finally is optimizing the agent's workflow. So whatever's taking them a bit longer than it should be, remove that. You shave 2 seconds off a ticket, but when you're handling thousands in a month, that adds up.
It's really well said, and I love how you're getting feedback from your own agents to improve the system and the platform that you're providing to them. We say the same thing about talking to your gamers to figure out feedback from the game. What do you like about the game? What do you don't like about the game? So you're basically eating your own dog food, which I love, because the only way to improve what you're doing is to hear back from the people that are in there on a daily basis doing it. And I think that's a fantastic way to look at it. And Dang, I know you're much more KPI heavy. I know kind of your KPI as well, but Dang, I remember you kind of throwing a whole bunch of KPIs at me when we got started. So I know, and I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that part of the reason you wanted to make that move was to help Trust was for enhanced KPIs, or maybe KPIs that you didn't have before. Can you tell me a little more about maybe what was missing and why KPIs are important to you?
Yes, our old system was kind of a black hole regarding KPIs. It has some statistics, but quite complicated to extract. And I think the only KPI I got hand on kind of was the first response time and maybe the solution times. I don't recall in detail anymore. But yeah, HelpShift is way easier to get hands on KPIs like CSAT. We couldn't measure CSAT beforehand. This was quite helpful because I didn't have any idea how our agents are performing. Um, Turns out we are doing quite well. Um, First response times are more easier to get. Basically, any KPIs you wish with the new platform is easy to get, and that's super helpful for reporting on my side, to evaluating um, agent performance in total, but also for each of my agents in particular. If there are some bad KPIs, we can talk about it, look into it. Why is that happening? And then try to improve the performance again. Sometimes it's trivial reasons. Maybe some translations got wrong or something like that, and then the community is just pissed and rates the agent, although he did a good job, in a bad way. That's people expressing their anger. I think it's also a good tool to have. If people are dissatisfied with or frustrated, then they have some kind of a possibility uh, to yeah, how to say, to canalize their anger through giving a bad rate or something. Well, if you look into it and you see why this happens, and you see the CSAT in another light, so it's not that an agent always is performing bad if the CSAT does not meet expectations. But we didn't see, if you have a look on the global CSAT on our product, um, even bigger impacts on our community through some problems we produced after an update. There was no significant impact on the CSAT on if you look at globally. Yeah.
Do you I know some of your strategy includes kind of working closely with keyword studios to help kind of optimize processes. Are you seeing value? Are you seeing kind of uh, your goals that you had set? Are you seeing those be hit quicker, or you're not sure yet based on kind of the help that you're receiving?
Not sure if I reach goals more quickly. I would say it helps to maintain my goals, basically. And regarding internationalization, it has some features which are quite helpful for my setup, where I have only one agent, for example, for a specific language. When this agent is on sick leave or vacation, then we have some tools to still help the players.
Is It's interesting to hear. First of all, I guess you're talking about language AI, right? In practice, I love the idea of auto translation of inbound and outbound messages. Are you seeing the value there? I mean, obviously, you're saying that when your agents that only speak specific languages are gone, you have a way to respond to those customers now. One, are customers still getting upset about translations that are wrong? And did language AI help with that?
Um, Hard to judge, actually. We got some complaints that maybe the AI translates game specific phrases um, wrong because we did not yet train it. But in the end, the players are happy that they get help quickly. And then I think they oversee some smaller mistakes in the translation I have observed.
Yeah, just backing up a moment, right? You mentioned you weren't able to measure CSAT before, right? Did you have an idea of where your CSAT was before and where it is today?
No, no clue. I don't have. Today it's very satisfying. Where we have been before, I don't know, but I would assume that we were on a good level as well.
Okay. I want to dig more into this other topic here. Again, you guys were probably together for, I think it was last week, right? Where you guys, or 2 weeks ago, where you guys got to meet.
It was
Um,
2 weeks ago, yeah.
two weeks ago, you're all part of Stillfront, but I don't think you guys were necessarily familiar with one another. And then we have Ed Hartman here, who kind of helps facilitate an introduction between the two of you because you're both part of Stillfront. Like, now that you two know each other, you're almost going to start forming your own community, for lack of better words, where you can share best practices. We've heard best practices from Conor. We've heard best practices from Dang, right? Like when you first meet, like what type of do you talk strategy? Do you talk about that? Do you just talk about the Olympics, football? What's the conversation like? And do you think you can start talking to others at your group or other groups because of these strategies that you two formed together? Conor, you want to start it off here since everyone's silent?
Yeah, sure. To begin with, I'm quite an insular worker, so I mostly focused on my own things until Ed introduced me to Dang. And after that, we did have a fairly long conversation at the Playa office, which is extremely large with a very large kitchen, which I've had on my mind for a little while now. And next time I'm in Hamburg, I'm gonna have to find the excuse because certain things can't be discussed online. It has to be in person, and it has to be at Dang's place. So that's the plan going forward.
Has to have a full
Um,
breakfast, right?
yes. So the intent for me will be to get in touch with other studios as well, try and facilitate open communication, because the difficult part is always going to be approaching other people in other departments, and this applies to anywhere you are. You don't want to be the guy who shows up and says, let me see your stuff so I can tell you how to do it better. And you also don't want to put onto somebody else's plate, hey, can you come look at my stuff and tell me how to do it better? Rather, I work with what I have and have to put the effort into reaching out and networking a bit, which is ultimately what this will boil down to.
And I think a lot of us, I'm just gonna say a lot of us also kind of get this imposter syndrome, thinking that I don't really know as much as I think I do. But I would discount that with the two of you, because you guys both know a lot, right? And I just think, once in a while you just need to be able to talk to someone to kind of spitball ideas, come up with ideas. And I think just when you two talk together and hearing kind of the different approaches you take, it's fascinating because you do take different approaches, and this is probably harder for our listeners to understand and how they work with their teams. Again, I think Dang has a bigger team, whereas Connor's working more with automations and a smaller team. But I guess Dang, same question to you, more so kind of about the networking, the kind of spitballing ideas together. Do you feel that? Do you see more of it now that conversation has been made, and do you see it scaling within the Stillfront group?
I think it's too early to say that it's the conversation in this regard is increasing within the Stillfront group. I think we need to find a way to start conversation first. Currently, we had a brief conversation, Connor and I, 2 weeks ago. It was quite interesting to talk about how we are approaching customer service, how we are using tools and stuff. Really inspiring as well. I think it could be beneficial to have some kind of a round table with all the customer service leads.
So I have one or two more questions for you, but before we jump into that, I want to talk a bit about gaming, because that's why we're here. Is what games are you guys playing these days, Connor?
So I'm all over the place in games at the moment, because a friend of mine has a YouTube channel that he writes reviews for. I'm playing Another Crab's Treasure so I can make sure his review makes sense, which is a lot more work than you might think. I am into Souls likes and Souls games, but I usually get about 2/3 of the way through before I'm like, I need a break from this, and then I just never go back to it. That's why Lies of P is sitting unfinished in my library. I'm also a big fan of city builders, of turn-based RPGs. I have the New Cycle, it's called. It's kind of a diesel punk city builder that's really cool that I've not really sunk my teeth into yet. And last night I was playing Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, the Warhammer game, and I've been struggling a bit with that. I'm actually not good at turn-based RPGs. I tend to 10 turns in, move one guy a little bit too far, and then the whole map wakes up with every single enemy there. And that's just the end of the game for me. I lose one mission, that's it, I'm out, I'm done.
So no civilization for Connor. We're sticking to real time and RPGs. Um, Dang, what game are you playing?
Actually, I do not play that much anymore. I used to play way more a couple of years ago. The only game I purchase once a year is Call of Duty, and that's just because a couple of friends of mine are playing every Friday multiplayer together and on hardcore mode. Um, these search and destroy only the whole night. And once in a while, I'm joining them. But yeah, I guess the last season I managed to join them 5 times a year or something like that. Just way more other interests in real life. Meanwhile, where which I prefer to playing online the whole night.
All I heard there, Dang, was that you don't really play games. You only play Call of Duty hardcore mode, which is like a weird flex you have there. I only play the hardest game with the most anxiety out there. Um, Love it. So I have two more questions for you both. We are entering the latter half of 2024. A lot of cool technology has been introduced across the board. What are your kind of expectations for the rest of 2024? Do you have any goals that you're trying to hit, or any technologies that are exciting you? Connor, you want to kick it off there?
I'm aiming to, and this is going to sound bold because it is a little bit bold. I want to see how much of my CS can be self sufficient because I only have a few agents, and the agents I have are really, really good. And so, what I would like to be able to do is have all of the basics running itself, have all of the players being helped effectively. That's a key word here. I don't believe in any kind of support that deflects players without them getting help. So I want to work towards making sure players get their answers, they get what they need, and my agents are more free to go through tickets, to go through cases, to be able to properly quantify bug reports and things that we find, and to put together feedback reports. Because it's all well and good having reviews and things, Google reviews, Apple reviews. Typically, players leave reviews more when they are angry and they've just quit, and that's not super useful for knowing how best to improve the product because this is an angry player writing out of anger. When you have a more engaged CS system, when players can reach out to you and have a proper conversation with someone who knows the game and understands the game, you get much more valuable feedback out of them because they're already past the basics, they're already past the fix the game level of feedback, and you can have the back and forth. You can ask them directly, you feel this is unbalanced. What would it look like to you if it were more balanced? And that's the kind of relationship I'd like to build with the community and make sure we can do all of that. By next year would be nice. We'll have to see what happens there. I'm not a great long term planner.
Well, you got a great partner here. If you need any help with that, you can reach out to us and let us know. And I love it. But can you give kind of some visual to the audience right here? Like, how many tickets ballpark are you having a month? How many agents do you have? Like, just kind of get people to understand what you're dealing with here.
At the moment, I have two people who are working full time and a working student who helps us out half that time. I believe we have confirmed our third agent who will join us later this year, which I'm very happy about. And we deal with now. The last time we went over the stats, we were looking at something like 44,000 over 90 days. Like, this is a lot of contacts for not a lot of people.
So your ballpark would be about 5,000 tickets an agent a month, which is a high number, which is great. And it's awesome to hear. I want to, and maybe we save this for Gamescom, but thinking about, if you want to scale more, you need to connect to backend systems, right? Whether it be wallets, whether it be player databases, right? Is that something that you're investigating now, something that you're interested in, something that you're already doing?
I'm almost certain I've seen it done before at a previous place, but I'm not sure which previous place. I have memories of a bot that was used to. So a player would complain, "My currency's missing. What happened to it?" And this bot was able to then just list their previous transactions of premium currency, and 9 times out of 10, that's going to answer the player's problem. And if it doesn't, it means that the currency has actually gone missing. And so, because this is going to take a little bit of work outside my department and require some technical expertise that I simply don't have, it's on the list. It's just not at the top of the list unless someone comes to me and says, "Hey, I'm an expert at exactly this. I already work for your company, and I want to do it for you." So, of course, if anyone from Bytro is listening, I am open to this.
All right, everyone tweet about it. Maybe we don't use Twitter anymore. Never mind. Dang, same question to you. Now is going into the second half of 2024. What are your goals? How are things looking?
Basically, I'm looking forward to have more AI features within HelpShift to try them, implement them to our processes, see how can we benefit from AI making the work more efficient. Um, yeah, I'm just looking forward to which possibilities will be there from a user's as well as from an agent's perspective regarding the AI usage in customer service. And yeah, I'm really curious what's coming up within the next year or 1 or 2 years regarding AI will be, I think it will be huge. There's a big potential. Um, Other than that, I look forward to the PC widget, which is coming out, so that I can finally also have our Steam players staying within the game when contacting support or looking for informations.
Cool. Appreciate you sharing that. Last question I have for both of you, and then I'll give you the stage if there's anything you want to talk about. But I'm curious on what is your biggest success or what you're most proud of. And please know it doesn't need to be related to Help Shift, but I'm just more curious in your role here. Kind of what are you most proud to kind of say, hey, I'm very proud of this. Dang, you want to start this one off?
I think I'm very proud of my team because they, although probably having a bit or kind of restraint against changing the system, they in the end were quite open to it, adapted to it, and are now working with the tool on a day-to-day basis, delivering outstanding outstanding support performance. Players are very satisfied with my team and with the support outcome. That's where I'm really proud of.
I love it. Spoken like a great manager. Proud of the team. Love to hear that. Connor, same question.
I have two, and one of them is along the same lines as down here because the agents I have are fantastic. They bring an energy and enthusiasm that means I can work with the automatic systems I am, that I can have whole days of barely communicating with anyone else, and once I pull my head out again, everything is still running perfectly. Everyone's good. Everything's proceeded exactly as it should, and it's because they're just really good at what they do. I'm very very lucky to have ended up with this team. And then the other side is the automations itself. I have no idea how I've managed to handle the amount of tickets that I do with the amount of people I have, but whatever I'm doing, it is working. This system is it's an abomination onto technology, but it works, and I'm very very happy that that's happened because I have no idea how else I would have handled this kind of volume.
I could tell you as a sales engineer that is not one way I've ever described the system, but it works. But I could tell you part of this that might help you is that, in our smart intent feature, which is our AI based learning, you have 93, just about 93% of your issues being created with our AI intent, meaning that you're understanding the question that's coming in by the player and you're automatically routing them to the workflow that best helps them with their AI. So did you know that it was that high 93% created with intents? And if you did know, is there anything you did special to get it there?
I put the smart intents on every interaction. One thing that I can't abide is not knowing things that are going on. So within the help shift system, all of the contact that we have, I need to have some metrics, some way of knowing what we're working with. And opening tickets and reading them one by one, it's doable. It's not efficient, but it's doable. And smart intents means I don't have to do that. I can see which smart intents are being used the most. I can compare this to CSAT. If we find one intent is getting a lot of 1 stars, does this mean players are picking this intent because it closely matches what they really want and no intent exists for what they really want? So do I need to add another? Are they too specific? Are they too vague? It's all data that I can use to refine it over time. And when you tell me it's 93%, I'm actually a little surprised. I thought I had it on more than that, so now I have to go back and see what is evading the smart intents and then fix it so they can't.
There you go. Knowing is half the battle. That's what GI Joe here used to say. So knowing what you're about to face and being able to be prepared and send it to the right people, the right team, it is very, very important to automating and to scaling. So Conor, dang, I am very thrilled that you spent your afternoon with me, and I appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to our extended conversation at Gamescom. Anything else that you would like to share before we go? Maybe how people can find you or so on. Dang.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity talking to you. And yeah, search me on LinkedIn, send a friend request, or how do you say, business request? I don't know. We meet each other at the community clubhouse next month. Feel free to get in touch with me. Happy about some interesting conversations.
Thank you, Conor.
Same for me. I'm reachable fairly easily on LinkedIn. If you do send a request, add a little note, say how you found me. I get a lot of requests offering me construction services. Not sure why, but I get a lot of that. And of course, if you do find me at any of these networking events, I am much more approachable in person than I appear online. So go ahead, approach me, tell me I'm famous, I need it.
We are working on it. We will get you there and we will get you famous. Dang, Conor, thank you so much for joining. And we'll have all information about Conor and Dang and Playa and Bytro. But in about 1 month, and less than a month, in a couple of weeks, you'll be able to hear the two of them speak at Community Clubhouse at Gamescom or DevCom and Gamescom. So if you're going to be going to DevCom, be sure to check out their panel at Community Clubhouse. We're going to talk about the transition from email support to in-app support. We're going to scale on it. It was great to hear kind of how you guys approach these problems and solve them. Thank you so much for joining us today, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.